This podcast has been produced by Contact a Family, the national UK charity for families with disabled children. It's part of a series looking at the benefits which families with disabled children can claim. For this podcast, I spoke to two of Contact a Family's helpline advisors, looking at the main features of Disability Living Allowance, also known as DLA.
Disability Living Allowance is a benefit that's not based on anybody's national insurance contributions, and it doesn't take into account any money that they've got in the bank. It's purely based on whether a person has extra needs as a result of their disability. It might be that they need help walking, or it might also be that they have care needs.
It is important to be aware that you don't need a specific diagnosis in order to claim DLA, and it doesn't have to cover one specific condition. It can be a learning disability, a mental health condition, behavioural condition, or a physical condition.
I believe there are different parts to the DLA, is that right?
Yeah, there's the care component, and within that you've got three rates, the lower, middle and higher, and that relates to your care and attention needs, which would include bodily functions such as help with eating, sleeping, breathing, walking, getting dressed, going to the loo. It can cover a whole range of different needs. And this can be in different settings, so perhaps when playing or at school or when out and about shopping. The other part of it is something called the mobility component. That's payable at one of two rates and generally given where a child has difficulty with walking or getting around, or perhaps a child with a behavioural type condition needs lots of supervision because they lack safety awareness. In that situation, you might find that your child will qualify for the low rate of mobility component. It's also important to remember that if your child has a learning or behavioural type condition, it is possible to get the high rate of mobility component, but the criteria for that is very specific and you must seek specialist advice if you want to pursue that.
And where do you get the form from if you want to make a claim for DLA?
It's always best to phone the benefits inquiry line because they will date stamp the application from the date that you make the phone call. And their telephone number is 0800 88 2200. You can always phone the Contact a Family helpline to find out where the Disability Benefit Centre is in your area.
If DLA is granted, can this lead to eligibility for other benefits?
Yeah, possibly. If a family, for example, they're getting income support for their child or tax credits, depending on their circumstance with tax credits, you may get some extra money. But definitely, if you're getting income support, then getting DLA for a child can lead to something called the Disabled Child Premium. So it is a bit of a passport. It can lead to lots of other things. If you're providing substantial care for your child, and by that we mean at least 35 hours care each week, you may qualify for something called carer's allowance.
When do people become eligible for DLA?
You have to have had the condition for 3 months or more. For the care component, that can be just from 3 months onwards, but it's much harder sometimes to put your case forward when it is a newborn baby because obviously they do need a lot of care. For the mobility component, you become eligible when the child reaches 3 years old for the higher rate and 5 years old for the lower rate. It's paid to the parents until the child reaches 16, and then you can choose to have DLA paid in the child's name, which wouldn't affect tax credits or other benefits received. This is covered in a separate guide called Money When Your Child Reaches 16.
There are certain situations where you can get DLA payable from birth, therefore you don't have to satisfy the 3 months condition, i.e. you have to be ill for 3 months, and that applies if your child has a terminal condition, and that means not expected to live for longer than 6 months. And in that situation, there is a much quicker way of processing the claim.
Is DLA affected if your child frequently has to go into hospital or stay overnight?
It can be, and there are quite complex rules about this. There's a sort of number of days that can be ignored. So if your child does go away into hospital in and out, or it perhaps is in residential care in the week at school, it is worth checking with the helpline to see how DLA may be affected.
Once DLA has been granted, what happens if the child's condition becomes worse?
Well, you can always ask the DLA unit to look at the claim again, and that's what we call a supersession. It's very important, though, at that stage, if you think you're entitled to a higher rate, to get some expert help. It's quite a complicated form to fill in, but by asking for more entitlement, it can sometimes backfire. So it's very, very important that you understand the criteria, how it applies to your child, and if you think it applies to you, get some help with filling in the relevant forms. But yes, you can always ask them to look at the claim again, depending on the changing circumstances.
Is there anywhere that parents can get help with this?
Yeah, if they live in an area where there is a Contact a Family office, there may be someone there who can help. But if people contact the helpline, we can perhaps put you in touch with local advice agencies. Can't reiterate that enough, really, how important it is to get help completing it.
For help and advice about the benefits that you're entitled to claim, please call our free phone helpline on 0808 808 3555. Our publication, A Guide to Claiming Disability Living Allowance for Children, looks specifically at the topic which was the focus of this podcast, and our publication, Benefits, Tax Credits and Other Financial Help, provides an overview of the main benefits families can claim. These publications can be downloaded from our website at www.cafamily.org.uk or ordered from the helpline And the number again is 0808 808 3555. This podcast was produced in September 2010, and all information was accurate at the time of recording.